Yeah, we can get started. Omnia, do you want to do a little? I know everybody's quite familiar with you here, but just for posterity, we can have you kind of talk about your background and how you got into Hyperliquid and what you're doing with Kinetiq. Just a little rundown.
Yeah, yep. Brief background again, because yeah, we go into more depth on previous episodes. So if anyone's keen on that, yeah, feel free to either hit me up or just go watch that episode. But yeah, got into Hyperliquid actually May of 2023 after hearing a podcast called Flirting with Models in April of that year. That was actually, I believe, just for first podcast on Hyperliquid. Super intriguing, as you guys can imagine, and yeah, obviously, I would be lying if I said that we at the time knew what Hyperliquid would be back then, but um, very glad that we obviously started to use the platform very, very early, stuck around. Uh, I mean, it was very clear that at that time there was something happening here on Hyperliquid that was very different, but not necessarily something that would spark as much attention as it ended up getting. But more so at the time, I guess I could say what was the most interesting thing, because at the time I remember thinking to myself, funny enough, like, do I really want to join another Discord? That was literally the thought that came to mind, and I remember that recently, like I think a month ago. And yeah, the answer ultimately came out to be yes, because of the fact that it was built on its own blockchain entirely, which to me was intriguing at the time. Very different consensus mechanism back then. For those that understand Tendermint consensus, that's what Hyperliquid used to run on before moving to what's called now HyperBFT, and 10xing the throughput ceiling in production right now. That was in April of last year. So yeah, really huge developments year on year. And yeah, but otherwise, personal background outside of that is liquid and venture funds, working at DeFi protocols. Most notably, probably some may know, Redacted Cartel is what it was formerly called, but today called Dinero, where I co-headed BD. And quite a bit of our team actually held various roles there, from founding team level on the technical and operational side, all the way to even design, for example. So yeah, that's it on my end. Yeah.
That's super cool. Now you're building, this LST, and again, we will definitely touch on it, but I highly recommend to people want to hear more about Kinetiq. We really went into it on the last podcast, so it's quite in depth. But well, right, in building Kinetiq, obviously this isn't the first LST, protocol. What did you take from, some of the more popular ones? I'm sure you paid attention to the ones on Solana, the ones on ETH.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what did you take from that, and then what are you doing with Kinetiq that you think is worthwhile?
Yeah, good question. I mean, the first, I would say, notable technical difference is, doing it on Hyperliquid. Most people today still think of Hyperliquid as a perp dex, funny enough, or just a perp dex, I should say. And while that's a fair assessment to an extent, it's obviously, as we all know here, blossomed into way, way more. So that is the first thing that will probably confuse those that don't understand what Hyperliquid is just yet. But I would say that's kind of a larger technical difference. Every other chain is basically designed as this general purpose smart contract platform first, and then build apps around that after. Whereas in this case, Hyperliquid was custom built to support its flagship application, which is Perpetual Futures Exchange, right? And now offering a spot feature since last year when Per came out. Unit, obviously, it kind of raised the stakes even further and made it like a proper exchange where you can now trade spot majors, such as Bitcoin, ETH, Fartcoin, and Solana soon, and I'm sure way, way more. So I would expect to see, again, just my own personal speculation, I would expect to see spot versions or even perpetual versions of other major assets in the traditional asset classes. For example, like S&P 500 or Nvidia, Tesla, et cetera, other commodities, for example. So anyway, yeah, that just comes to mind in terms of like the technical difference between something like Kinetiq existing on Hyperliquid versus like, another liquid staking protocol on another ecosystem, Lido to Ethereum, Gito to Solana, Infrared to Berachain, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the reasons, I guess, outside of just the philosophical differences, just again, a purely technical reason, is we leverage what's called precompiles to basically allow for stake that's ingested on the EVM side to have the Kinetiq smart contract essentially manage that on the Hyper core side, which is where staking for Hype lives. So that is, I would say, a pretty huge technical difference. And essentially, we would be the first ever LST, again, across all markets, right? Across all platforms to leverage this type of technology because it doesn't exist anywhere else. It would be the equivalent of if you could stake BNB tokens on BSC and get benefits on Binance, right? That's what precompiles enable. So yeah, just where the staking would live is obviously on the exchange, but BSC is its own kind of EVM compatible smart contract platform, right? So I hope that makes sense. In short, basically being able to talk between the two different accounts, if you will, EVM, where Hypios live today, for example, and Hypercore, which is where the exchange lives. They have, I guess you could say, unique features where Kinetiq can exist on the EVM, but can deploy stake on behalf of users in a totally trustless and permissionless decentralized way via Hypercore. And then on top of that, select validators for them as well through what we call StakeHub. So yeah, I'm happy to dive into StakeHub too, which is a key difference, draws inspiration from some other LSTs validator selection, but yeah, that's pretty much high level.
StakeHub, just briefly, that's the way that you determine where the actual stake is going, right? Which validators is that you're talking about?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the big question for any sort of LST, right, for the most part, is how do you dictate which validators get the stake, right? That's usually reserved for validators who are able to offer some sort of, rebate or other financial incentive ultimately, where the LST is able to get some sort of value back, or vice versa. The validator gets some sort of direct value from the LST. And how does this relationship actually look? Well, the LST is ingesting all of this stake, right? So a validator is always going to be super, super keen on, just from a business level, right? You can't blame them. They just want to get as much stake as possible. But this leads to kind of skewed economics in some ways. So LSTs, I guess you could say, can technically generate more value and extract more, if you will, by being able to, make deals with validators of some kind, direct stake to them in exchange for rebates or kickbacks of some kind or some other kind of value, right? Whereas Kinetiq doesn't take any of those opportunities, and on the contrary, actually pits the validators against each other in a competitive way, healthily, where essentially you need to always be on your A game, right, in order to earn the stake from Kinetiq. That's the most important distinction, and that's what StakeHub enables. It's taken inspiration from, LSTs across other ecosystems and just kind of brought it to life on Hyperliquid in the way we know best, right? The Hyperliquid team has set forward this really cool ethos where we could leverage this type of solution in a way that's very much in line with what they've done. So yeah, Kinetiq's not in the business of extracting at all in that sense.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. I think, listening to your answer, I think one thing that's super fun about having you back and why we're encouraging people to go back to the first one particularly is because if this podcast was a college class, whatever, I think the last one would be like a 100, 200 level, and we're probably going to get into 300 level. I don't know if you guys are American college people, but basically I mean it's more advanced college class in terms of what the jargon, and we're going to assume that you know some stuff. But since we probably are, why don't we just very briefly do the classic, let's explain what the fuck an LST is for a 5-year-old. And as part of it, I'd love if you could explain why would anybody ever hold the base asset? Because there is a reason to, but there's also a lot of reason not to. And if you could explain that dichotomy, because for instance, me holding Solana, I would never ever hold basically just pure Solana because I'm going to be holding Solana.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you could go into that a little bit while explaining just what is an LST, why would people use LSTs, just very briefly.
Yeah, it's a great question. So networks as a whole, especially proof of stake networks to be particular, and in this case DPoS or delegated proof of stake, where you delegate your stake to a validator in order to have them secure the network, and you in return receive inflationary rewards for doing that. They rely on the stake to kind of increase the economic value or economic means necessary to attack the network, right? This kind of shows why networks would like to see a higher amount staked, because of the fact that this means it would take way, way, way more capital, and at some point it reaches what some would consider escape velocity to accrue enough stake to attack the network. And then what you want to see too is that it's distributed across several validators too, right? The more the better. This is why Ethereum is considered the gold standard in terms of decentralization, because there's a shit ton of validators. I don't remember the exact number, but it's a ton. hundreds of thousands of validators to be particular. I believe Avalanche and Solana have the next highest validator count, and have tons of stake. So that's kind of the gold standard in terms of proof of stake network, wanting to have a lot of stake, partaking in the actual stake asset, so that you can secure the network, create, or how should I say, make sure that there's a lack of an incentive to kind of attack the network because it's so economically, expensive. And then B, you want it distributed across a variety of validators. You don't want it concentrated to like 1 or 5 or 10 or whatever, like some very, very small percentage amongst the entirety of a potential validator set. Because of the fact that if for whatever reason these validators go down and they hold, who knows, 85% of stake, 90%, etc., some egregious high amount, right? That does also create what's called centralization risk. It's why some people have kind of shit on Lido on Ethereum, for example, because it's a $25 billion protocol in terms of TVL, and it holds a ton of ETH, right? This is, I guess you could say, maybe not an existential risk to Ethereum, but in the event that Lido selected validators do have issues, this is potential slashing risk for a shit ton of ETH, and the fact that it has the most ETH inside of it, right?
It'd be a huge black mark on staking in general.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, it would just have so many weird outcomes.
A staking primer, I would say. Liquid staking is when you want to partake in the staking of the network. For those that don't know, this requires you having to, partake in some form of lockup, because again, we're dealing with economic powers where if there is some sort of issue, right, like you don't want to have stake unlocked immediately, right? You create this, as you could say, sink for tokens where they will effectively be locked up for X amount of time. And if people do unstake, it'll take X amount of time to get back into their wallets and liquid for them to do whatever they want, right? Liquid staking addresses the problem of opportunity cost when it comes to staking, because yes, for example, let's take HYPE in this case. You could stake your HYPE, but you can't really do much else with it. Today, it means, a great thing for people who can now take advantage of the fee tiers due to staking. That's a really great thing. And we've seen thousands of people start to do that, which is awesome. But the problem is the fee tiers, or the savings you get from the increased fee tiers, would essentially need to outweigh the yield you can earn with your HYPE across, in this case, HyperEVM, right? So that's why liquid staking is such a big deal for Hyperliquid and any ecosystem as a whole, I would say. But in this case, let's talk Hyperliquid. And that's what kHYPE is basically poised to come and bring to the market, right? The most, I guess you could say, fully integrated solution where people can deposit their HYPE into the Kinetiq protocol. The smart contract emits kHYPE for them. So you're minting this kHYPE LST, so to speak. And then you could take advantage of the staking yield, which currently is 2.2% roughly. And then you can also use your HYPE across any opportunity in DeFi. There'll be several marketplaces. For example, I know we have a ton of Hypios here who will actually allow you to price your Hypios in kHYPE. So that's a big thing as well. So the Kinetiq focus has essentially been omnipresence in the Hyperliquid ecosystem. It should feel like opportunity cost holding your HYPE naked, unless you have a particular desire to do anything with your HYPE that, would put you at a disadvantage if you held kHYPE, which again is not the goal. The goal for us is to ensure that your base asset should be kHYPE, right? And the liquidity profile will help to kind of ensure that, people could justify doing that. And the yield opportunities would also be able to line up and ensure people could justify doing that. So that is kind of the marriage between, what staking is for, the problems that it does introduce opportunity cost wise, and then how liquid staking comes in and essentially provides a solution to those problems, and then kind of unifies everything in one spot, right? You can partake in the security of the network, decentralization, because the Kinetiq smart contracts are basically delegating to an ever-changing validator set because of the fact that every day the set is rebalanced if it needs to be. So yeah, I would hope that gives people some context if they didn't already have it. And if you heard it, yeah, thanks for reappearing at my TED Talk.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I want to run through, I'll just yab for a couple minutes here, sort of like the skews of what you can do with your HYPE and the different sort of interesting risk trade-offs that you have here. So at a base level, you just hold your regular HYPE, do whatever you want with it, buy stuff with it. The obvious thing is you can also sell it, right? You can just sell it immediately. Once you enter vanilla staking, suddenly you're in this world of now I'm locked for a week, but I can stake to whoever I want. Now you have a bunch of different options. You have Hyper Foundation at the lowest risk. The reason why it's the lowest risk is because the Hyper Foundation would never do something against their network that would cause them to get slashed.
That's
basically, like a very obvious assumption. 99.999% chance that they wouldn't. But they take a 3% commission. That means that it's not the best opportunity from a commission sense, right?
Yep.
So then suddenly vanilla staking, you go down to the other ones. There are, for instance, we're gonna have validators, there's other validators. You get benefits, you might get airdrops, you might get who knows what, you may just get a lower commission rate, right? So you get slightly better APR. Still, you have this 1 week lockup, and then you lose the security of we know for certain that they're not going to ever get slashed because you're no longer delegating to the Hyper Foundation, you're delegating to somebody else,
That's right.
third party. So that's the you sort of move in, and in general in crypto, whenever you increase your yield, you add value to your thing, you're moving up in the risk spectrum, right? Even if it's just incrementally.
Exactly.
So what I think is so cool about kHYPE is that you switched around into, you have the LST obviously, and immediately now you suddenly have the second party risk, which is like, okay, Kinetiq has to be trustworthy, right? And that's what's cool about what you're doing, which is you have basically this, my understanding is this is a permissionless. We just talked about your StakeHub, and now you're going through all the validators, and you're just staking basically the validators that have been proven to be reliable, and you're distributing across them so that there isn't this one risk. It's distributed. So it's lower risk on average. The odds of like 10 different validators getting slashed ever is very low. It's already infinitesimally low, but yeah. You really are lowering, you're moving up the risk spectrum, but then you're doing it in a way that's very purposeful. Just the same way that lending protocols have caps because they realize that they're going up in the risk thing. And so what's cool about that is then suddenly, as you said, kHYPE becomes this asset that if it has this proper trust and people are willing to hold it and spend it like a normal asset, then you can price things in it and you can start buying it. And then it's this asset that has that yield baked in.
Yep.
So that's what I think is the most compelling part of kHYPE is, like the whole thing,
it becomes
you can use it as real asset.
It's like you said, like making that the base asset is by far the most important part of, I guess you could say, the short term of the Kinetiq vision, particularly because of the fact that, it makes hype, or in this particular case, kHYPE, prime collateral, right? Like any money market should feel really comfortable being able to raise the LTV on something like kHYPE because of the fact that there's yield baked in as well. So like you can partake in all the lending activities that we're seeing hundreds of millions of dollars in appetite for today. I think the last time we ran a space, Hyper EVM had probably just gone live, I think, or maybe not even. So yeah, like everything we discussed has essentially been proven out in terms of what we speculated on the short-term interest being. And yeah, I mean, with that being said as well, imagine being able to run all the different lending strategies that people are doing today, lending, borrowing, that is. People are doing looping. I mean, there's a lot. People are running basis carry trade.
Or what?
Well, so that's really interesting. So for those that didn't understand one of our most... kHYPE. Yeah, that's funny. So the loop type guys, they did say that kHYPE will be under the hood for sure, right? So that's a given at this point. So, for those of you that use iHYPE and you are, very comfortable with the counterparty risk there, like by all means, like feel free to do that. The Hyper-B guys have also said the same thing. So it doesn't matter how many derivatives of liquid stake tokens are built on top. We want kHYPE to be the underlying asset of all of these, yield aggregation protocols. So Hyper-B to iHYPE, for example, it doesn't matter. Like they will all, again, I don't say this to be an arrogant prick. I say this because this is the way that we've designed the product. They will all find opportunity cost in not using kHYPE. And that's the goal. That's the most important part, right? We need everybody to basically justify using kHYPE as the base asset for any strategy. It doesn't matter what kind of basis or carry trades you want to run. It doesn't matter what kind of lending and borrowing strategy you want to employ, what kind of leverage you want to take. kHYPE should be the very base kind of home asset, right? I guess you could say the perfect money Lego for hype. That's the best way I like to put it, because you're earning yield on the collateral. Right now, you're not earning any yield by depositing hype, like any staking yield to be particular. So there is a net cost to borrow. In this particular case, if your borrow cost net with kHYPE is 1% before factoring in the kHYPE staking yield, which is 2.2%, then you're earning 1.2% net on an annual basis to use kHYPE as collateral. Versus Hype, you're going to be paying, 1% or 1.2%, for example, to run the same strategy. And at size, this really matters. So this has to be factored into whatever strategy you want to run. Am I buying a meme coin with leverage? Am I, longing or shorting Bitcoin with leverage? Whatever the strategy is, you have to factor in, what the returns are, or the cost is. I should be more particular about this. With whatever your collateral asset is, whatever asset you're borrowing, there's a lot that goes into it. So, yeah, making the perfect money Lego is the most important step in the short term, right? From there, then we have integrations, right? Doesn't matter what money market it is, they should be incentivized to, list kHYPE as collateral and give it more LTV because of the fact that, there should be quite a lot of deposits and quite a lot of usage, and that scales with trust, right? So, for example, the selection of validators that we were talking about, the security efforts that we've undergone. So we've undergone 4 audits. Everything is essentially wrapping up. We've received 2 out of the 4 reports already. The remaining 2 probably get sent over within the following days, and you can all expect a pretty interesting post soon. Not necessarily about going live, because we do need to wait for the pre-compiles for that, the right pre-compile to be particular. Thankfully, the read one is live, especially since our last space. But yeah, very soon developers will be able to have access to the final version of the kHYPE contracts prior to going live, so that any sort of protocol, it doesn't matter, like I mentioned, if you're some sort of yield aggregator, a money market, a DEX, it doesn't matter, you can scope out kHYPE from a contractual perspective and make sure it's ready for launch by the time that we, open the floodgates. So yeah, I hope that gives quite a good primer as to why it's important. kHYPE is essentially like the best possible money Lego for not just people that want to hold and stake their hype, but people that also want to push the envelope and basically use their hype in DeFi in the most crazy ways. I mean, it doesn't matter if somebody wants to use their kHYPE and like leverage long Buddy, or leverage short Bitcoin, or leverage long Hypio. You can do all of that from one asset, right? And earn a base yield while doing that. That's the most important part. So yeah, I hope that helps.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think money Lego is one of the best terms that you could use in terms of like what I'm sure you see, what your job is to do, like, and like do your jobs fast. Do your jobs become this Hypio being
Yeah,
the last
exactly.
2 weeks. But no, but sorry. Yesterday, we had this space about stables, and we were talking about this exact topic, which, and it'll come back around to kHYPE, but we were talking about stables and how, like, for instance, both of the native stables have like experienced a little bit of depegging. And in one case a little bit more, and in another case more, and I think USDXL, the one that did depeg more, has come back towards $1. But one of the things we were talking about quite a bit was, yeah, this money Lego thing, without actually saying money Legos. It's just such a good term, but like, how do we get these dollars? I think your job, if you're making a stable on Hyperliquid, is how to get people to actually be using it, not just like in this incestuous loop within your own protocol, but like, is this a dollar that people will actually take into and hold as a dollar, rather than like as a potential short trade, and try to do all these other things, or what happens if it depeg, what I mean? Like, just to actually use it as an asset and as a money Lego. And then one of the things that we started talking about more was the collateral on Hyperliquid itself, which brings me to my question. In terms of your job at making kHYPE a money Lego, do you think that one of your big goals, like further ways out, is to try to get kHYPE as collateral, either for the permissionless perps or for Hyperliquid itself?
Yeah.
Just love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, so HIP3 is, oh man, it's Pandora's box in a good way. I hope that doesn't come off bad at all. There's a lot of, like, what I mean by that is there's a lot that could be done. kHYPE as collateral is a huge one. Yes, obviously kHYPE as collateral on the main exchange is, I would say probably the biggest goal, besides like, accruing X amount of stake of total hype. But yeah, like, that's going to be pretty crazy once that happens. And I think it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. I to further explain what I mean by that, it's like, if there's crazy demand for kHYPE, which we believe there will be, thankfully, it shouldn't be very difficult to get it implemented, right? I think we've done all the right things from a security perspective. We will continue to do that. We'll be announcing more and more security measures as we go live. So it's a never-ending process, right? Especially as TVL scales, Kinetiq unfortunately just becomes like a larger target, but that's just part of the game. So we need to continue ensuring that our security efforts are scaled. And that's just really equally important for Hyperliquid as a whole, right? So this has to be factored into what ends up becoming collateral on the exchange. I mean, it's been over 2 years that USDC has been enabled as collateral on Hyperliquid. And now we're talking about, I just made a post, I think this morning, where it was like now reaching near 70% of total USDC on Arbitrum, which is for sure an all-time high, and then roughly 5% of all USDC in existence. So we're going to have to do a very good job of accruing a shit ton of hype stake in order to make the Hyperliquid team feel comfortable making kHYPE as collateral. But I believe a proper LST is the key to massive ecosystem growth. You know, and I mean, in Hyperliquid's case, it's the LST that uses all of the underlying technology available. In this case, for example, pre-compiles, managing everything trustlessly. And today that doesn't exist, but we believe the introduction of kHYPE will ensure that those standards are met. We've talked to a variety of, well, maybe be a little bit more specific. I think it's fair to say we've talked to every possible player that holds HYPE today. And I don't mean every entity or every individual, but I mean from the most tourist retail user all the way to as big of an institution, right? And then right in the middle could be the most sophisticated or unsophisticated Hyperliquid hyperbulls, right? It doesn't matter. We've really had a conversation with every possible user. And we believe that we've been able to craft an interesting enough experience for everybody to actually either, you know, set aside hype for kHYPE or just, you know, not partake in anything until kHYPE is live. So that should be really interesting. And I talked about recently on the DeFi Dad podcast, the introduction of what we call iHYPE in the future once everything there is settled and really just formed up with regards to partners. But there are institutions today, for those that don't know this, that actually hold hype, and they have done so since the first day of TGE. Market makers like Flowdesk have helped them to acquire their tokens, essentially, because the institutional experience in crypto is a very interesting one. Slippery slope in many ways, but compliance needs really stop them from being able to do what it is that they want. I've had a conversation with a $1 billion fund, and I mean, like, actually, like AUM over $1 billion liquid fund. And they've said that for those that understand the liquid and venture fund world, like you have like allocations of specific verticals in crypto that can go into your buckets, so to speak. So you may have a side pocket of like 5% for like a degen fund, right? That you can then go and, you know, punt coins with. So this may fit into like a bucket of a particular fund that may want to go and punt hype, but it doesn't go into their DeFi category. It doesn't go into their, I don't know, exchange category or whatever. It goes into, again, the degen fund because they really can't, or the degen allocation because they can't justify, you know, it fitting somewhere else because it's not listed on exchanges. Custodians besides Fireblocks today don't support it, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of compliance hurdles for institutions to be able to justify allocating to hype if they don't already have the mandate to go and set up an EOA or some sort of multi-sig to go and acquire it themselves. And this is, again, most of them, if not almost all of them. So the solution for this was, from the Kinetiq side, iHYPE. And iHYPE will effectively allow institutions to hold hype in a fully compliant way. We feel like there'll be really cool ways to basically allow them to go from whatever assets they currently hold, like Bitcoin, ETH, Sol, or whatever, into iHYPE directly through, you know, working with several partners on this. But the point being that it's been really interesting to be part of, you know, building bridges to these types of entities who otherwise cannot access hype in any way, shape, or form. And to finish the thought that I had mentioned about that specific fund I had a conversation with, which just really stuck with me, was, you know, they had a maximum of X% that they could keep their fund in, you know, for, you know, degenerate punt, for example, in this case, hype, right? But they really want like 15+% of their fund in hype. And if you do the math on a $1 billion fund, you know, if they can only allocate 1 to 2% of their fund to hype, the math there is very clear. That's only, you know, $10 to $20 million. But if they really want to scale up to 15+%, we're talking about 150+ million in size. but that they really can't do because Hype lacks the infrastructure to support that type of size to put that sort of trade on. Whereas institutions regularly hold 8 to 9 figures of SOL, if not 10 sometimes. And this is considered totally normal. So yeah, we're a long way away. I'm not saying like years or cycles away, but I'm saying in terms of the infrastructure, because of the fact that Hyper Foundation has this very neutral and I guess you could say straightforward, fair approach where they don't pay shit for anything. Which again is good, net good. Maybe annoying for some builders, but like very, very good at the end of the day. You know, we're a long way from something like that happening, but
Everything's a trade-off, right?
very much so, very much so. But we've had conversations with a shit ton of custodians. I mentioned this recently as well. Zodia, Hex Trust, Anchorage, Fireblocks, Hopper. I mean, like all the really, really big ones, and we're talking like hundreds of billions in assets under custody between them all. And they've all heard of Hyperliquid, but 6 out of 7 of them all want a huge fee. 2 out of 7 are willing to do really cool bespoke agreements, but not with Hyper Foundation. It would be with teams in the ecosystem. So yeah, when you build on Hyperliquid, you have to be ready to invest into the ecosystem because the foundation is not going to be doing that. And that's what makes it the best place to build. That's what kind of brings Darwinism to life the most here, you know? So I talk about this quite a bit, but anyway, I've yapped for quite a while on this. So I'll shut the fuck up now in that regard. But I do hope that this widens the perspective for some people besides the intraday price action for Hype, because most people don't get to see, you know, the how should I say, the below the surface iceberg interest in Hype, right? I mean, I heard something super crazy recently, which was Bitcoin and ETH institutional products are not really seeing anywhere near as exciting inflows right now, but institutions, like all of them want Hype, which was super crazy to hear. And I heard this from very, very a big, highly regarded institution in the space, and that was super crazy to hear. I mean, you know, this is not something public in the sense that they don't go publishing thesis. We recently saw Marana, which is the family office of Bybit, for those that don't know, post the first, I believe, at least proper institutional-esque, you know, thesis on Hype. So it's not a common thing at all, whereas everyone knows usually with like a massively VC-funded ecosystem, you may have like a flurry of articles and theses that get published when everyone wants to pump their bags, right? So there's just a lot of things that are missing in terms of marking some sort of, I don't know, I'm not even just talking about price action here, but I'm just talking about like sentiment-wise, price action-wise, etc. But like the usual, I guess you could say, top indicators and stuff like that just aren't even in sight for Hype because of the fact that everyone is force sidelined. So anyway, hope this helps. I'm on a tangent, but
No, I think it's awesome. I think the big thing I took about is people should like kHYPE because they're making VCs or exit liquidity with iHYPE. That's just
yeah. Well, you know, to be fair, like design-wise, iHYPE will actually not be tradable. So again, super compliant here, right? Like not even VCs, but I'm talking more like institutions have this issue with commingling of funds. So it cannot be tradable in like the traditional stake pool, right? So they will have a whitelisted deposit and a stake pool and withdrawal, obviously. So, you know, I won't be able to deposit myself, or Hypio man won't be able to deposit himself, or anybody here won't be able to. But it's for institutions, so kHYPE, everything, and then validator set for them too will also be whitelisted. And for those that understand how institutional staking as a whole works, this is just the name of that game. They cannot just deposit their assets and then their Hype gets delegated to some random validator that the system selects, right? It has to be very uniform, and that's why it lives in an isolated state compared to the open and public version of kHYPE, right? So yeah, that's, I guess, the best way of putting it. Lido has done this as well. I'm sure Gito for Solana will go down this route at some point as well. I mean, it's their game to lose. So yeah, that's an interesting, I guess you could say, perspective on what the future of like different parties partaking in liquid staking looks like too. And I don't need to go very far to explain what this looks like, right? I mean, this looks like also stake type ETPs, ETFs, right? Like, so start to think about that and like who will be able to power that. I mean, you know, I'm not trying to speak in third person here, but that's what Kinetiq is built to support. So yeah, I hope that helps give some context as to like what the overall mission is. And is this an immediate thing? Do we launch with this? Absolutely not. But I just want to help give some context as to why liquid staking isn't just, or Kinetiq liquid staking for Hype isn't just, I guess you could say, cornered to its own specific kind of subset of DeFi. As I mentioned earlier, we want this to bleed into every aspect of Hyperliquid's culture, like NFT trading and everything else, right? So, yeah, hope that helps. Memes obviously count as culture stuff, but yeah.
I think we've covered a ton of the bases. There's one super pertinent question to kHYPE that I think would be great to get an answer on. Then I'll have some kind of like maybe pseudo rapid fire questions that would be fun topics to discuss, and we can get some people up, and maybe it'll start some interesting discussions. But the one thing that I wanted to hit before we're kind of hit all the bases of kHYPE, we talked about it last time, I'm pretty sure. But one of the questions that people have about Hype staking is the APR, and whether the APR is, artificially low because there's an implied type airdrop. And the question for me would be, am I still exposed to that if I have kHYPE rather than just vanilla staking Hype? Like, assuming that there's a Hype airdrop and it would come to kHYPE through, all the stake types that you guys are.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and not one that we get asked often, which is why I'm glad you brought that up. So when you stake for kHYPE, the smart contract will basically be responsible for delegation of the underlying Hype. And since it is still considered a staking account, the smart contract will receive whatever rewards get distributed to staking. I guess the only risk to that is if there's a particular airdrop party of some kind, who knows, a protocol, a meme, I don't know, right? Like anything that just particularly excludes kHYPE and the Kinetiq smart contracts. But I don't really see that making sense, especially if kHYPE ends up being like a sizable portion of Hype stake. That would be kind of an unnecessary fuck you to those that use Kinetiq. So anyway, that is, I should communicate that is a risk, right?
No, it's great to say that. But like assuming that there is just like, for instance, from Hyperliquid itself, a vanilla Hype airdrop to all stakers, then kHYPE as the party that is managing the staking.
Yeah,
that
it would be easy to distribute, basically.
Yield.
Yeah, it would be very easy to distribute because of the fact that the smart contract itself is the recipient of all of these rewards, so to speak. So it doesn't matter if it's a meme coin, Hyperliquid itself dropping more Hype tokens, et cetera, or even if the yield is retroactively boosted, which, may or may not be my own personal take on what ends up happening. The Kinetiq smart contract will be able to basically pro rata distribute whatever rewards. It's very easy to tell, right? Because kHYPE has this constant supply. So that goes into the design itself, where it's a reward-accrual token as opposed to rebasing. So the number of Hype isn't increasing in your wallet. It's just one token, ultimately, however many kHYPE you mint, always represents a growing amount of underlying Hype that you can claim if you ever unstake. Or even easier, if you want to trade out of your kHYPE, you can just, swap into whatever Hype your kHYPE is worth. The smart contract
has like one kHYPE will be worth like 1.3 Hype.
Yeah, exactly. That's how it works. Yeah,
everything plays out. Yeah, exactly.
That's literally how it works. Like whenever somebody wants to deposit Hype into the protocol, they will receive after the first epoch, they will always receive less kHYPE because again, kHYPE has this fixed supply, and the exchange ratio is constantly changing as staking rewards are distributed. Which, for those that don't know, staking rewards get distributed every day at midnight UTC. So there's that point in time, since they're not dripped 24/7, they just have one single distribution period. The point being that every single day at midnight UTC, the exchange ratio grows. So technically, whenever you see kHYPE on CoinGecko, you'll always see like this USD premium to Hype from kHYPE, right? So to be specific, if you want to go see this in action right now, you go to CoinGecko, look up wrap stake ETH or WST ETH, or you look at Jito Sol, and then you compare them to the underlying assets. So you look up WST ETH versus ETH, you'll see a huge price discrepancy because of the fact that the yield is wrapped inside this one LST. Jito Sol, the same thing. You'll see it's priced wildly higher than Sol today because the yield from Sol that Jito has captured is just priced into what Jito Sol is. So yeah, I hope that helps make sense out of it. It may be confusing for people. We're prepared to handle all those questions, but we believe we've explained it in our documentation as well as simply as possible. There'll be an FAQ before people stake. So like under the stake tab. So yeah, it'll be very straightforward.
So yeah, just before I move on to my more fun questions, Thinker just shot us a reply and he said, "Can you explain more about the retroactive staking?" And all you're saying basically is like assume you're getting your 2% APR. It might actually give you as though you like got 5% APR. So if you're getting one hype,
Yeah.
like a 5 hype per day, you just get an airdrop equivalent to that amount.
Yeah, like I'll take off the Kinetiq specific hat for a second here and basically just like speculate. I see PBR here. We used to talk a lot of shit about this on Hyper Hour and just like speculate all day long. But yeah, like an example is I think today staking is incentivized personally. That's just my personal belief. Um, again, I go back to the staking primer, right? Like you want people to feel like incentivized to stake and secure the network. We already have a lot of staking interest today. It's like 12 or 13% of the total supply. So again, I don't factor in the Hyper Foundation stake, which is another 30%, which is why you see like 44-ish percent of the total supply stake today. Most of that is the foundation, like 4-1 is the foundation almost, or 3-1, something like that. But the point being that I think staking is not very diluted at the moment. Essentially, there's a lot more hype unstaked than there is hype staked. So my personal read on what happens there is, staking your hype right now may introduce, who knows? I don't know if this equates to some sort of airdrop or it equates to some sort of retroactive yield, but I definitely wouldn't mind if the staking rewards or emissions, I should say, from an annual perspective, retroactively changed from 2% to like 8%, for those that staked from the time staking went live to now, and then reverted to some sort of, chill rate and had some sort of chart with regards to emissions and whatnot. But that's my personal speculation. I think that because, again, important for the network. And yeah,
But it's also lines up. It lines up with everything they've done, right? They've always rewarded people who've taken the sort of conviction, but in an unincentivized way, like
that's exactly
spot
right.
token.
There's a lockup.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a lockup, right? Like it's pretty straightforward. And I've seen a lot of bitching and moaning about 2% yield. What the fuck is that? It's like, okay, well, yeah, you could do that, or you can get inflated to death on some sort of Cosmos chain. Like, have fun, right?
Yeah, and then the hassle, the token is worthless.
That too.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's like 2% APR, and it's like, oh, by the way, the coin's up more than 100%.
Yeah, exactly.
Not bad. Let's go into the fun stuff because we were 45 minutes in, and it's been great. I'm glad that we're still talking substantive stuff, but I think it's a lot of jargon. I think some people might be we might put some people to sleep with all our technical stuff. I love it, but you never know.
It happens.
Yeah.
I don't blame you.
Let's do here's a fun one. What's the wish list for unit assets to list? Maybe 3 coins or assets, stocks, commodities, whatever.
Oh man. Oh, that's a good one. Fuck. I would love an FX pair. Probably like USD to Euro. That would be really interesting to see. Like seeing FX trading on Hyperliquid is just like one of the final bosses. I would love to see oil tradable. And so that's a commodity. And then the other would be, I would like to see some sort of massive stonk tradable, like Tesla or Nvidia. I say those two particularly because like Elon will always like make Tesla volatile, which is great for Hyperliquid. And then Nvidia is like obviously the chief AI stock, right? So it doesn't get much better than that. And then I'll throw a bonus one in there. I would very much love to see like just going back to crypto assets for a second now, like I would very much love to see XRP tradable on Hyperliquid. I think there's millions of XRP holders out there who, damn, I don't know. I sound like one of those theologian, like people knocking on people's doors and stuff, but like, there's definitely people to recruit to the, the Hyperliquid exchange strata. Yeah, exactly.
100%.
Exactly. Yeah. Cardano, XRP. Yeah.
It brings something briefly touch on, you talked about why Tesla would be great is because the volatility. Why does Hype benefit so much? Us as Hype holders, why do we benefit so much from volatile assets being on Hyperliquid?
Yeah. For those that don't already know, the 100% of the profits that Hyperliquid makes is used to buy back the Hype token. I actually hate the word buyback because it never sold any tokens. So buyback just doesn't make sense because that implies that there is tokens sold. Maybe this is just like a stupid, corny thing that I just do, but nonetheless, or like that I just think. But the point being that it's actually just buying tokens off the open market that it gave away anyway, which is an order of magnitude more Chad than just like, hey, we sold you these tokens, we'll use whatever money we make to buy it back, right? So that's why I like to personally call it what it is, which is buying the tokens, not buying it back. So yeah, 100% of the profits from the exchange are used to buy the HYPE token on the open market, which is amazing. It's really fun being able to, use the fact that there's 16 basis points of the total supply that were accumulated over the last week, while your next favorite ecosystem basically either unlocked that amount or sold that amount. Yeah, exactly. So that's super fucking hilarious. Number one, but for those that see the 97-3 split, it's talking about general revenue that Hyperliquid makes. So out of all of the revenue that Hyperliquid makes, which is split between the exchange itself, like the fees taken from anybody trading, and then HLP's profit, it's about a 97-3 split. So roughly 3% of what's made goes towards HLP. And again, HLP, for those that don't know, is essentially like the automated open sourced, market maker for Hyperliquid that anybody can partake in demographically and just earn pro rata whatever whatever amount of HLP you represent for your deposit, you earn from its profit. So that's like what takes the 3% of the total rake, if you will, and then 97% of that, which represents 100% of the exchange profits itself, goes to the HYPE open market buying. So no matter who you are as a HYPE holder, you do benefit directly from that, which is why we've already seen 11 billion volume day, which is fucking cracked and amazing. We need it to be higher liquid. So yeah, more assets, the better. Not necessarily just like list dog shit, but more like list really good stuff that people actually want to trade. Bringing establishing a crossroads between several other parts of the market, whether it's trad or just, I don't know, dead crypto assets that somehow are worth $30 billion, Cardano and XRP coded, XRP even more so than Cardano. But yeah, that's basically the high level as to why you want really great volatile shit.
Yeah, no, it's great for the token. And then, also it brings people in. Like, I mean, if you could trade all the stuff that you listed would bring people in. I was talking to my friend because they added Farcoin the other day. He was like, oh, Farcoin price didn't like meaningfully move. And I was like, yeah, that's not like this. It reminded me so much of like when XRP won the court case and then like it pumped and it went back to wherever it was. And it was like, yeah. And then what happened 6 months later was XRP raped everyone to death. Right.
Oh,
it's like,
yeah.
And it's like, this is how you evaluate assets and like projects and ecosystems. It's like, you have to look at these underlying things that develop over time. It's not, you building kHYPE, like, it's not like you like, oh, we're making LST, boom, it's done. You know what I mean? It's like, no, it's integrating with all these, it's integrating with Hypios. It's integrating, you know what I mean? It's all these different little fucking pipes that come into it. And now Farcoin is a pipe that comes into it where it's like, oh, by the way, if I want to trade Farcoin, I can do it on Hyperliquid. If I want to trade Sol, I can do it on Hyperliquid. If I want to trade XRP, if I want to trade NVIDIA, if I want to trade Tesla, all of that contributes to this becoming eventually the house of finance. It's not any one asset. It's this accumulation over time and weathering the storms of, Binance attacking it or being the most compelling perps marketplace, and all the fees go back to the token. So it makes people even more incentivized, and then less fees for all of the blah, blah, blah.
That's right.
Leads into my next thing. You have to make a Hyperliquid commercial. What would you make? What would it be?
Oh man, for normies, crypto bros, or who in particular? Just
your Coinbase trying to advertise Hyperliquid like they do with Bitcoin.
Oh man. Okay, final piece of context for that. Do we care about regulatory related stuff from that hypothetical commercial or no?
I think in this world it's all good.
Okay, in this world it's all good. Again, hypothetical and not what I would actually do in this real world. That's not hypothetical, right? So I would advertise the fact that Hyperliquid doesn't require any KYC. I would advertise the fact that you can use up to 40x leverage on Bitcoin. I would advertise the fact that you can deposit any asset into the exchange, similarly to pretty much anywhere else. And I would figure out a way to properly, again, hypothetical, right? If there was a split in terms of rewards allocated for coming and signing up to Hyperliquid and using the platform, I would very much leverage the fact that there is an overhang of like $10+ billion in rewards to be distributed for trading on the exchange, which would be ridiculous. So I think it would, like, if done properly, like some Super Bowl ad or something, I think it would take Hyperliquid like 3 days to pay for that. It would bring in probably 7 times the users it has right now.
It's a great, we did a great, like very explicit example of the asset. But I was
Yeah.
thinking more something like, like there's this like homeless family, and then somebody, and then they're like, but I thought ETH was going to go up. Like
Oh man.
I thought ETH was going to be the future of finance. And then they want somebody like in a Porsche, like,
Yeah. With a Hypio driving, yeah.
that's not,
Yeah.
but no, but you definitely advertised. You did effectively just see like book a commercial very well, just on the space. So you advertised it well.
Sorry, son, we chose communism.
Yeah, exactly. Vitalik had to keep tweeting about World of Warcraft. Like,
Yeah. Fucking guy. Yeah.
why are Hypio's CryptoPunks Hyperliquid?
Oh man.
That's my next one.
Yeah, by the way, for the record, this isn't Hypio man saying that, so just so you know, he's not tooting his own horn. This is what I could personally call the CryptoPunks of Hyperliquid. I think Hypio's, I've said this many times before in text and over voice, that Hypios have been this marvelous fuck you to everything that's kind of come before it in terms of where it existed, right? Like it came to existence on Base. It basically ripped ass on Base in terms of like all the volume related metrics that I'm sure Jesse Polak would have loved to use as like internal marketing material at the 13th Coinbase board meeting of the day. But it was all done as a way to basically siphon volume away from Base and onto Hyperliquid. And I'm sure if somebody pulled up that chart, it would be pretty horrendous. So that's always been really fun and just a really cool way, I guess you could say, that people have been able to kind of see Hypio making a difference and like culturally just making a stand on Hyperliquid. The CryptoPunk related feature is an interesting one. Ethereum, didn't really catch popularity with regards to the fact that it was a smart contract platform, and today it wants to be 17 different things. But back then, when it was just this quote unquote world computer and smart contract platforms, it was very clear that when CryptoPunks minted, there was this kind of initial cultural, I guess you could say, identity that was built around what being on Ethereum was like. And I feel some sort of, I guess you could say, early presence of that on like with Hypios. I wasn't a CryptoPunks minter, so will I be able to give a 99.99% accurate retake of what that experience was like? Probably not. But if I had to imagine what it was like in the day, that's how I would personally look at it. Today, there are many other smart contract platforms and other, I guess you could say, exchanges of some kind that, could capture mindshare amongst a growing crypto space. But I think generally on Hyperliquid, when you think of it, you already think of Hypio. It's not, for those that have dealt with other ecosystems before, and I don't just mean as a user or like an interested farmer or something like that, which, all respect to you if you do kind of approach ecosystems that way. But if you've ever interacted with other ecosystems at a BD level, usually they have a set kind of cookie cutter, amount of collections that you can choose from at launch, or, that will have their mint dates baked in, that will have some sort of deal with the underlying foundation of the ecosystem for some kind of support. They take it personally if like the team members don't rock the PFPs of that collection, and then there's like this weird civil war. And I've seen this happen many times. So yeah, the fact that this exists in a very, very organic way on Hyperliquid, obviously there's no kind of, I guess you could say, financial endorsement, or I guess you could say cultural endorsement from the team, and that's okay.
No,
right? Like Jeff rocks a punk.
absolutely nothing, and that's fine.
Yeah, that's totally fine. Exactly. That's the great part, is that it's fine, right? Like Vitalik doesn't rock a punk, Jeff rocks a punk. Jeff has been very clear. He's like supportive of tons of tech in the space. He's not necessarily PvPing against anyone else, so let the community do that, right? But yeah, nonetheless, I think, kind of the presence organically of Hypios here, not necessarily to, come and kind of, astroturf, but more so like actually be the de facto face of Hyperliquid from a cultural perspective, just gives it a very, very unique property. I think very soon it flips Milady. I don't care how many people get mad about that reality. I think, you just have to look at the very different economic circumstances on where Milady is currently existing.
We've had to supply, so
that's true as well.
Yeah.
That economically, it just makes sense, right? And
but also like what's going on with the ETH and what's going on with Hype. So like, yeah,
that's right.
And it's no disrespect to Milady and them. No, I really like I love, there's a lot of kindred spirit energy between you and me, Omnia, since we first met. And, you've been here from the day one. I've always appreciated your support for us and you getting it. And some of the stuff that I love that you say is, people say a lot of bullshit about us. And like one example was when we were on base, they were like, why would you give all this volume to base? And they don't see it the way that you see it, where it's like, no, like it was a huge fuck you. Like this mogged all of base NFTs who were making fun of them. And Jesse could never mention it because then he'd be advertising Hyperliquid because we were unabashedly calling it a trailer park while we were on it. It's like, if you were paying any attention at all, you would know that's what we did. And and it's so disingenuous. And the other part that I'm personally proud of, and I don't mind tooting our horn, like I don't take full credit for it. If anybody deserves credit for our success, a big part of it goes to Jeff and their team, but then also our community and people like you and all of our community being rabid. But one of the things that I love about it is there was this big energy of like crypto just gotten so cynical and the hype airdrop was so big that there was this real people filtering themselves in terms of like, oh, I'm not going to buy somebody else's airdrop. Right. And what I know, like, you want to make kHYPE an asset that deserves to exist, not just like another LST. Like you want to make it interesting, you want to make it compelling. Like you don't want it to just be this random extractive thing that nobody should actually be holding, right? And when it comes to Hypio, like we had a real role to play in terms of onboarding people, and like it wasn't about like, hey guys, buy my airdrop. Like, yeah, I got an airdrop. Like, well, it wasn't me like bringing on people to buy my airdrop, and people were gonna buy my airdrop regardless, and to buy the coins that I bought on TG regardless. But showing them, hey, there's going to be a lot of financial opportunity on Hyperliquid because it is the most compelling project in crypto. And this is something to be excited about. You guys are holding stuff that is dog shit. You guys are holding coins that are going down and down, and there's nothing compelling about them anymore. The narratives aren't there. The energy isn't there. And you'd be better off just in fiat if you're not going to switch over to Hype or Bitcoin or whatever, or Fartcoin. And we've really tried to not get it into these games where it's like, oh, we're going to drop like a new collection. And it's like, it's not what it's about. It's about like, understand the opportunities of Hyperliquid. And again, what I'm proud of is people within our community have already built stuff like the Buddy airdrop, massive. We just had this whole series of airdrops, the main one being Rub last week, of people building stuff. And already the vibe isn't, not only has the value of the NFT gone up disgustingly, like, but it's also like 0% in this vibe of like, oh, we brought in all these new people to Hyperliquid just to be exit liquidity. It's like, no, actually, like, if anything, it's the other way around. And they're making stuff for people here to buy and make money on too. And then like, our big problem is going to be not letting this turn into like the retardio energy of like people are dropping coins or dropping like dog shit NFTs or dropping scam.
A lot of agendas at once, basically.
Yeah.
It's very weird, intangible,
bad faith builders who use Hypio. That's
exactly
the problem. But in general, we've had this, real pulse of good faith and value creation and things that deserve to exist. I think Buddy is a coin that deserves to exist. Clearly, it's already on the strict list for Hyperliquids. The team clearly thinks that.
Exactly.
And that's what I'm super proud of, is that we did it. It wasn't this vibe of like, hey, come buy all these Hyperliquid people's airdrop stakes for playing. It's like, no, actually, you can make a fuck ton of money on Hyperliquid, and they've already done it. And you could just even wipe out the floor price. Floor price could have stayed at $75 for mint, and if you count all the airdrops, they already would be able to discuss. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's just, and the opportunities of the whitelist, or the opportunities of playing different coins that have come out. There are opportunities of buying hype at the lows. If you had been in the Hypio, you would have been exposed to that time where hype went down. You would have understood why it's a good asset. So that's what I'm proud of with us. And I don't know that we're one-to-one crypto punks in terms of like pure builder energy.
No,
I think we're this chaotic mess of like, traders, degens, builders. And that's what I think is beautiful, because that's what I think Hyperliquid needs. I want to build something that like Hyperliquid actually needs, is like real people who weren't just traders who got an airdrop. Because obviously those guys are aligned, right?
I'm going to give a really retarded example here. And I preface this with, I use like Miladies and Remilios as an example because culturally, especially like on a builder perspective, like, I don't know, man, I'm not even going to attempt to put my finger on it, but you could just tell that there was like a, I don't know, cultural or a spiritual energy emitting from, one of these builders who would, outside of the ones that were just virtue signaling, right? Like, whatever that ended up looking like. But nonetheless, the point being that, it's very clear that there is a central kind of, like, as you could say, brain on Hyperliquid from a cultural perspective. And so I bring up this example, and this is as like a previous, like, very large holder of like Miladies and Remilios, by the way, like used to make markets for them, et cetera, et cetera. Like we did this with a lot of our friends. We would make markets for specific traits in both of those collections. So yeah, that was like really, really fun. So again, this is homage to them, if anything. And why I really hope to see a lot of them actually on Hyperliquid. And why not bridge the fucking collection over? It shouldn't be on ETH anymore, unless.
Bro, they're ETH max.
That's the thing. That's the thing.
I don't know what that's.
That's the thing, guys. It's probably not going to happen. But nonetheless, the point being that it's not a death of the collection itself, but just kind of an homage to, you know, the builder culture that they've developed and the just general like retarded but smart in its own way type culture. So I say so. The retarded analogy that I was going to bring up is, you know, there's this is going to be interesting, but there's a lot of different types of zombie movies, and like a weird thing that I like to look for in zombie movies, for example, is like, are the zombies like slow and retarded, or are they fast and like cracked, right? And I think Zombieland, which is like a hilarious comedy zombie movie, is an example of like slow and retarded zombies. And like Resident Evil, which is more of a thriller, right, is more of like super cracked, fucking mutated ass zombies, right? And if you looked at all of them as like the central brain or like nervous system for, you know, its own movie, right? And in this case, the movie being Hyperliquid, again, ecosystem specific stuff, right? You would look at Hypios as like very, very cracked and like, you know, just smart. You don't want to fuck with these type of zombies type thing, because they all like Hypios generally move in like a particular direction that all has to do with growing the ecosystem as a whole, whether it's developing some sort of protocol from a DeFi level on Hyperliquid, some sort of hypercore related integration at the EVM level. There's been several stuff, right? Whether it's like just general group chat memes that have turned into their own specific collection, like Hyper Ricardos or gems, which are really interesting too. And also memes, right? Like, so you highlight two of them, Buddy and Rub. I mean, it's just kind of a very clear, innovative direction that you don't necessarily fade. And I'm not even talking about like just from a financial perspective, from a trade angle. I'm talking about just generally culturally. It's very hard to fade something like this. Whereas like, I don't know, go to an ecosystem like Say or Sui, and like it's very clear that yeah, you may have like different hordes collection wise, right? Just going back to the zombie example, you can all tell that they're all fucking retarded, and you just don't want to be you just don't want to be very much associated with them at all. It's clear that there's nothing but financial motive behind them. And yeah, that only lives up to a certain extent. So anyway, I use that, you know, very, I don't know, maybe off the book example to kind of dictate my best explanation of why I think Hypios are primed to kind of take this quote unquote CryptoPunks of Hyperliquid type role, because of the fact that it's inspired this, man, I'm just going to put it the way it is. It's like winning energy. Ultimately, you come to Hyperliquid and you associate Hyperliquid with winning, not just because it was the biggest airdrop ever, but because, you know, you didn't have 99.5% of everyone just take it and retire, right? Which I'm sure many could have done. You had most stick around to actually, you know, come and build further.
You flipped it on its head, dude. It's completely. Like the example of, you know, if I owe you $5,000, it's my problem, but if I owe you $50,000, it's your problem. Well, yeah. If I airdrop you millions and millions of dollars, and you still like it, well, it's kind of your problem. Like, it's kind of your job to help build this.
Yeah, exactly, like, exactly. There's a lot of responsibility
in a real sense.
Yeah, a ton of accountability. I've seen, and for those that don't know, like, there's people that have tried putting together class action lawsuits for extending, or no, not even extending. Sorry, they're trying to recover their hype airdrop because they didn't follow the 30 and 45 day notices of.
It's like the bare minimum of just clicking the button. Dude.
Click like 3 buttons.
Bother.
And there was like many extensions to the point where I was fucking annoyed. I was like, God damn, like how many more extensions? You know?
There was. I remember being like, I'm being deluded because they just extended it right before the airdrop.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it is what it is.
Yeah, they did it twice before the airdrop.
Summer. Speaking of zombie,
I have. Yeah. That's another crack.
That's it. Do you like that one?
That was good.
Crazy one.
That was good. That was like a series, I think, as well. Yeah, something like that.
That's my goal. If we had to be zombies, I'd like to be those ones.
Just be cracked.
Those ones are fucking scary, dude.
Yeah. So you know what I'm talking about. Like, it's actually not it's not that retarded of an analogy, right? Like, you have really retarded ones.
Bad. I like it.
Yeah, and you have like really cracked ones that you're just like, all right, like, let me not fuck with this. Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, that's my own personal retardio take on you know, what separates collections, just wheat from the chaff type of thing. And hopefully a good cherry on top to the pot. I'm down for any questions if anyone has, or if anyone stick around. etc.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say we're trying to keep these around an hour
Yeah,
15ish.
yeah.
So if anybody wants to come up and ask any couple questions, and if not, we'll wrap it up. But if they do, we'll wrap it up a bit after that. But thank you for your time. Also, thank you for all your support and building on Hyperliquid, because that's what we're doing here. Is we're trying to build this. We're literally building the Hyper EVM. Everybody's adding their piece to that.
Hypio world order type shit.
Okay, we got Root. Are you ready for Root? Root and Sakuna are coming. So
yeah, let's run it.
I think you're thinking a glitch. Hopefully, the thing gets through Sakuna.
Hello, testing. What do you check on the video?
Hello.
Hi, Root. Welcome. How you doing?
What was popping, Brody? Hey, Omnia, I got not like a personal question, Brody. Like, I like for real. Are you Asian, Brody? Like, are you like? I'm trying to figure out where you like your exes and shit.
We'll not answer. We'll not elaborate.
No, what do you mean you will not elaborate?
We'll not elaborate.
Are you Singaporean, Brody? Are you Singaporean?
I know some Singlish. That's about it.
Jeff? Are you Jeff?
Can confirm. Definitely not Jeff.
Are you Chinese?
Definitely not Jeff. Oh man, I know some Singlish.
Yeah, bro. No, that's the only question I have. No, but like for real though, like awesome things, clickety clacking. Omnia, you doing that shit, bro. I'm hyped up about it. See what you bring to the future in the table, bro. Like keep doing you, because you're a real one. Because I know how when people's like, if you lie shit, I sniff the shit out of you, bro. Sniff that. I'm living that right away. Yeah.
Hey man,
Root's like our dog, and if he's barking at you, then you're in trouble. If he's licking your toes, then still he's licking your toes. So
the primary root lore is pretty hilarious. Like the root's first spell on the buddy chart is just like legendary. So right back at you, Top G.
Yeah, because you know why I did that, right? Because sometimes the port needs to fly, because I'm a peacock, so let me fly, man. I'm a peacock. You feel me?
Legendary.
I tried to do the inverse route the other day. I tried the 8 lube at the bottom, and I lost like $15,000.
Oh man,
Root. I respect the sell the bottom.
Nah. You cannot tell me that on Spaces. You lost how much?
Oh, I'm not gonna say it again. It's painful. But hopefully I gave it to Hypio, so got airdrop lube, so it's all good. Tricks and Sakuna and non-existent. You guys got any questions for our guest, Omnia?
When is the launch? When is the launch? Omnia, launch.
when launch? Yeah, we'll need to. I won't say bug them because they're obviously busy, but like, it would be pretty hilarious, honestly. In like one of the channels in the Hyperliquid Discord, if it was like when write precompile, that would be pretty funny. We do that all day long in the Kinetiq Discord. So honestly, if you haven't seen it yet, it is. I think it's like, besides specific posts I see every now and then here, like obviously community related, for Hyperliquid, like it's probably the main source of entertainment throughout my day while we wait for a precompile. So yeah.
My hope is we get like validator set like tomorrow, and we get live, because everything is moving forward our validators. And then hopefully we get the stake and we get in. And then I can move my shit into kHYPE, because I assume that we'll be good on the metrics to be out.
Yeah.
But we got to get our validator in the mix. And then the next day, once we're accepted out, please do write precompiles, Jeff.
Yeah, seriously.
I'll go right
Precompile summoning circle.
Exactly. Z, you got any question?
I do have a question for Omnia.
Big Z.
Do you follow OX Carnation's account or not?
I do, yeah. We used to work together, yeah.
I can support you now, bro.
Yeah. We did some work together in the past as well. Yeah, we've worked alongside
I
each other.
spent too much time watching that account.
Hey man, it happens, to each their own. Oh man.
Anybody else? We got Andy, non-existence, and Tricks. Any questions from you guys?
Yeah, man. Yeah, great space as always. Omni, I don't want to get too philosophical, but like, what's your motivation? Like, why are you here? What drives you to keep building? I guess maybe you don't necessarily need the money. This could be a good lucrative business, but like, what is it that drives you to do this, to build this Kinetiq?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think I've been pretty congruent in my answer pretty often, and like I'm always really happy to go back into this, because it's obviously very much a passion related thing. I don't know how many people in crypto get to say that they get to very much appreciate waking up every day and get really, really excited about what they're doing. Obviously, there's a financial incentive for everybody to do whatever it is that they do, whether good or bad. But maybe this sounds like a super corny answer, but like doing what we do at Kinetiq would probably be, I don't know, 1/10, 1/20th as fun as it is. If it wasn't for the fact that, we work with all friends, all people that we've either worked with in some way, shape, or form in the past, and have shared really great experiences together. And just, again, like I said, like everybody we work with, we would be able to, meet up for lunch somewhere or like ride out on a trip somewhere. That's kind of the craziest edge in crypto, is just doing shit with your friends, and doing shit with people you really like to do it with. So I would say that that's probably a bigger part of my motivation than anything besides just, I mentioned this earlier, Hyperliquid's bred this culture of winning, right? And I'm not gonna lie, everybody wants to win, but it's really, how should I say? It's really exciting when you do something that's like proper fair in terms of no ecosystem backing you up. I think I've said this in a couple different either spaces or podcasts, but we've never had a conversation with anybody on the team about Kinetiq besides Zulian, which is like literally one person, not even, to my knowledge, a developer at Hyperliquid. The only reason we've ever even had a conversation with him anyway was just like bugging him every so often about the right precompile, updating him on audits, updating him. Like initially at first it was like, hey, like we're going to do this thing. And he's like, okay, and like that was really new, because usually across ecosystems, there's like a very specific process if you want to build anything. So was very much inspired to do this, not only alongside our homies, but also, being able to just do it in a really, really fair ecosystem, which in crypto is like a 1 in 1,000, if not more, type of chance. So for some lore, funny enough, War Daddy, who's on the space, he actually is who we owe all of the Kinetiq credit to from an idea perspective, because, for those that don't know about our just general lore on Hyperliquid, in April of 2024, when we actually realized that something different was going to happen on Hyperliquid, as I mentioned, when we got involved in 2023, it's like, okay, new exchange, what's interesting about it? It's its own L1, great. In 2024, with the introduction of the consensus mechanism, spot listings, per coming out, etc., like all this stuff that nobody really understood. Even today, people don't know how to price Hyperliquid. Like, that's okay. We would basically for 5 days a week, literally Monday through Friday, all of us would jump on the phone at a specific time of day, all doing our own thing, whether working somewhere else or like having our own shit to do across various time zones. We'd all jump on the phone and discuss like what happened on Hyperliquid that day. This was all of summer, early fall. And yeah, like one day he literally brings up on the call, he's like, yo, so we're seeing all these projects get announced, Hyperdrive, Hyperlend, Felix, et cetera, et cetera. And we're close with all of them because like we wanted to have a really, really firm grip on the ecosystem that was being built around Hyperliquid. Again, we eat, breathe, and sleep this shit. So like it was important to know who was building on it because, of course, DeFi is a critical component of the ecosystem. I know it's a tangent, but I think this is valuable to your question. And he was like, so we know all this that's happening. We have an understanding of EVM ecosystems, not just a basic one. We've built there, we've traded there across many other ones. So, across the combined expertise across the entire team, why don't we all basically just, do something on Hyperliquid? And now that was a really exciting question. You could tell like the air kind of got thicker in a good way because everyone's gears started turning in that direction. And the agreement, overall consensus wise, was like, we'll only agree to do something if it made sense, not just from a product market fit perspective, but if it excited everybody on the team. So again, lore here. We went through every single DeFi Llama category for DeFi. It doesn't matter if it had like $3,000 in TVL. I shit you not, like actually as low as $3,000. And then all the way up to like the most, I guess you could say, economically massive vertical in DeFi, which is liquid staking. And ultimately decided on liquid staking because of the fact that it can combine two of the biggest things that we love the most about DeFi. So the first was being able to obviously create a crazy money Lego. And as I mentioned, our experience at Dinero prior to that across some of our team members and other DeFi protocols for others, we like all of our experience and all of our interests were in doing really cool shit across rehypothecating stuff properly in DeFi, chasing yields, offering yield opportunities to the entire market, etc. And then also on the side of that in parallel was trading infrastructure. So That's what we did prop for quite some time. So being able to offer some sort of really, really cool trading infrastructure, in this case for Kinetiq, I've touched on this in the past, we'll have in the future, once the node software for Hyperliquid's open sourced, a proper MEV pipeline, kind of like Jito's built for Solana, A Priori is doing for Monad, et cetera, for those that are familiar with that. You'll be able to submit your order flow through Hyperliquid, and that value will be passed on to kHYPE stakers. In short, ultimately, we could do this off of the back of a really successful LST. So hence kHYPE was born. Kinetiq, the name itself was actually derived from kinetic energy, which usually ends with a C. But we put a Q in there because it sounds the same as a C, and it was kind of an homage to Hyperliquid. So yeah, I hope that helps and gives, a more complete understanding of why, not only myself, but the entire team wakes up really, really, I mean, man, I wish I could show like how excited everybody is. Like we have several calls per week. We have obviously our team chats, like it's just always popping. So yeah, I hope that helps. And then obviously again, I don't want to come off as like, oh, this is just purely for altruistic purposes. Like, let's be real. Like, if Kinetiq does really, really well, I think everybody involved, it doesn't matter whether it's the community, team, institutions, whatever, everybody should do well, right? That's kind of the notion of winning that underpins Hyperliquid. So yeah, that's where we're at. I hope that helps, man. I appreciate that question.
You're going off some big vertical, right? Like Marinade Finance or Solana did massively well, and it makes sense because you want to dream big. And I love that there's so many people here in Hyperliquid that they don't need to fucking be here. They're not doing it just for the money. Like not just you, like Chainbrain, Masky, Black. There's a bunch of people,
that's a great example,
here that are just here because they want to be here. They want to do something meaningful. They want to do something better, bigger. And they're doing this shit because they enjoy it. They enjoy working with their friends, and exactly. It's all a good vibe. So yeah thanks.
No, man, thank you. Smartest Money said it best the other day, which is like, if Hyperliquid fails, like I find like there's really nothing that is not only anywhere near as attractive, but I don't think anything would excite me. And Magnus, one of the co-founders of Kinetiq, we were talking about this quite often. He's like, man, if it wasn't for Hyperliquid, I don't know what the fuck we'd be doing today. Literally. So yeah,
no, dude, this is 0 to 1.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I couldn't have felt you more. And it's also, it's not just Kinetiq. It's like, just on this space right now, we got Andy with Hyperfy, and we got Zio on our team, and me. And I know, the fact that Hyperliquid is what it is, and it is this 0 to 1 moment in crypto that's actually doing something interesting. It just makes everything building on it more interesting. Makes the Remilio derivative on it more. We can do more interesting stuff with it. Right. That you couldn't do on Aptos. You couldn't do kHYPE. It's not as an interesting product on Aptos or Sui or whatever the fuck. You could. There's still gonna be LSTs. There's still gonna be Remilio derivatives. There's still gonna be whatever the fuck. But everything gets so much more interesting being on this product that is compelling, that has this strong leadership, and they set it from the tone from the top all the way down. And every team has, almost every team that I talk to has this kind of sentiment of how grateful they are for this opportunity. And yeah, if you weren't building, you'd be here anyway. So you're like. You know what I mean? Like if we didn't make Hypio project, I'd still care about kHYPE. I'd still be on after. So we're like, why not build something cool for everybody and build a community thing? Because that's what we can do. And everybody brings what they can do, just like you are. And DJ Tricks is doing fractional Hyperliquid stuff like he's done before. And it's just everything gets more compelling on Hyperliquid, I guess. Is it only possible on Solana? Everything more compelling on Hyperliquid.
The underpinning vibe, by the way, not to continue extending this, but the underpinning vibe is every single builder I've talked to, every single trader I've talked to, every single investor I've talked to for, who invests in other ecosystems like Barachain, Monad, blah, 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 you name it, right? Like, it doesn't matter who, like, you are, what background it is. Like, everybody talks about Hyperliquid as, kind of the pinnacle of whatever their domain is or their expertise is, right? In our case, it's like, we set out to build a product that we wanted to use for ourselves. And even today, right? Like, we're not even talking about August, September, when we first started thinking about this of last year. We're talking about today, right? Almost a year later. There's no product that fits the bill for us that we would use. Therefore, Kinetiq made sense to go and develop, right? The same thing for traders. There's no product outside of centralized exchanges that these traders would go and use. Therefore, it makes sense to trade on Hyperliquid. For investors, there's no ecosystem that matches up to Hyperliquid's cult-like, I guess you could say, makeup and retail presence, I guess you could say, because of the fact that the flagship application is perps, right? That they would rather allocate to, but they're forced sidelined because Hyperliquid never took any money, right? So that's I hope that this theme is very, very hard pressed into people's minds, because that is the general reason behind all of what's existed on Hyperliquid, right? So yeah, hope that helps.
We got a few more, and my phone is literally going to die in a few minutes, so let's do them fast. Portable charger. Sakuna's got his. It's a beautiful day, so I went outside and I didn't turn my back.
Touch grass.
Sakuna, what's your question?
Yeah, beautiful day. Oh, all right. Just a simple question. Actually, do you have when we started deposit the hype? So, do you guys do the mass cap for the user to deposit?
Yeah. So the goal is to actually have no cap at all. Maybe this sounds a little crazy, but the idea for us is there's not necessarily a need, like there would be, say, a money market or even experimental protocols like funding rate arbitrage protocols, for example, to have caps. In our case, we really just wanted to wait until everything was in a good enough state that we could open it up to everyone. The reality is there are several 7, 8, 9 figure holders of HYPE who really, really want to be able to liquid stake and use it in DeFi. So it only made sense that we come off strong, again, without upping risk, right? Like the risk remains the same. So everything has to be tested, especially when red precompile goes on live to mainnet, to ensure that it can handle the stake, that StakeHub does its job properly. So once that's the case, the idea is we want to get it to a place where we feel really, really, as confident as possible to open it up so that there's no cap. Now, if there is, that will be communicated, but right now that's not the plan. So that should be sufficient.
So like how okay, so it's like how do you guys handle the TVL or something like that? Like when the kHYPE goes, like everyone going to withdraw from kHYPE to HYPE kind of situation.
Yeah, so unstaking right now, there's two ways to basically get out of kHYPE at launch, right? To be particular, the first way is you can unstake through the protocol directly and just claim all of the hype that you have essentially accrued through rewards and the underlying hype that your kHYPE represents. So that's not an issue at all. The other side of it too, if you trust your trade execution, again, this is fronted onto the user, right? Like you guys as traders of kHYPE, right? If you want to go back into hype or vice versa, you'll have to check across all of the AMMs and just ensure you're okay with whatever slippage you may take going from kHYPE to hype. That is just not something that Kinetiq can control, but can help to essentially establish, various venues to trade on for, which we have done. We've announced some of them, but there are several others that will essentially, provide ideally robust liquidity for kHYPE hype. And then anybody can go create whatever other kHYPE pair they want. So kHYPE Buddy, kHYPE Rub, kHYPE USDT, kHYPE USDE, kHYPE FEUSD. I mean, you name it. Like it's pretty much infinite in terms of the kHYPE pairs that could exist. So yeah, that's the two ways that you can basically access the underlying hype. It's very simple. The unstaking process just follows the typical unstaking period of 7 days. Then you can claim your hype after. Again, 7 days. So, some people may want to swap out, and that's the beauty of liquid staking. You can just get liquidity instantly. Or you could just go and, again, forget the whole 7 day unstaking period and just immediately swap, as I mentioned. So yeah, that should help.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. I love you.
No problem. Much love, Hypio.
Yo, this is Andy. I'm gonna jump in because I got a piggyback on that. Is that cool?
Of course, Top G.
It's cool. We may get rugged any second. I'm not.
Let's get in there.
I'm in charge. Well, I'm trying to zoom as fast as we can.
So if you get me this time, do over. Dude, love it. Thank you very much. And let's get the teams together and talk again soon. But sitting on liquidity and pairing, so like Looptype has done a good job of adding incentives for LPs, and that's made them really liquid, which has been great for lending markets, which is why I'm interested, of course. Are you guys thinking about doing LP incentives? Have you thought about that? What do those look like? Where can I LP as soon as possible?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, man. Oh, man, that's always just the heater of the question. I super appreciate it because it's from the protocol POV too, right? It's not just like when this, when that. So obviously, we love that. So the only thing I will say, just out of fairness, is I'll go back to this point from very early on in this space where the opportunity for not using kHYPE, the opportunity cost of not using kHYPE should be massive compared to just holding hype. So let's just say everything is tailored to making sure that that is the case, right? I know I can't fully answer that question, but another kind of caveat here is that we come from that space of like understanding inside and out how important it is to make things as liquid as humanly possible so that anybody can come and trade regardless of the level of sophistication. So it is of the utmost importance that kHYPE liquidity is robust and deep. And there is very much plans to make sure that is the case, right? So, and to I guess put on a follow up to that is that, our goal with making kHYPE, which is why I super appreciate this question out of many others as well too, is that the product should be, lined up in a way where people will use it regardless of what comes with it. So that is the hope above all. But the point being that domination is obviously extremely important to us at Kinetiq, and we want to make sure that kHYPE is omnipresent. So marrying those two things is just the biggest challenge in the space, but really, really rewarding when that's done. So that's all we're focused on then. But yeah, I know, as a fellow founder, contributor, that we're right there with you with those ones.
Yeah, man. That's good to hear, and let's talk about that again on elsewhere. But unrelated to that is, so some of your team is former Dinero. When are we going to get DeFi Dave coming over? He's former Dinero. Come on, let's go.
So funny enough, he actually started working there after many of us, if not all of us, had left. So I have actually never conversed with him. So yeah, if you know him, I mean, feel free to start HL pilling him. You know what I mean? I'm happy to do the honors too.
We're perfect for SIGs inside. Let's get this going. All right, I'm gonna drop y'all. Thank you so much, Omnia. I'll let it up.
Peace, brother. Thank you, man.
I managed to save it at 1%, so we should be all right. Non-existent and rarded. Did you have something?
Yeah, hey guys, thanks for the great space again. And I have a question for Omnia as well. So you see this as a winner takes all situation, like regarding the landscape of LSTs on Hyperliquid? And if not, like, which LSTs? Like, I saw some more popping up. I didn't do any research into them, like, lately. Do you see anything interesting, like anything that you think would be beneficial to collab with Kinetiq, or like in general, something that Kinetiq would be able to do itself, like just with other LSTs?
That's a good question, man. Okay, I'll be blunt, because there's no reason being anything but that. I just want to be honest and straightforward about this. Like, I today actually use 0 LSTs because there isn't one that I would use. Again, this is not shitting on anyone in particular. I just have my personal reasons. I think I've highlighted many of them before, but just to remain objective, my goal from the onset, even prior to what became Kinetiq, was to always use Hype whenever that came out, to essentially support like Hyperliquid native protocols. And today I don't necessarily see any Hyperliquid native protocols. That's why Kinetiq is what it is. So that's the first thing. The other side is just design related. I've never been a fan of like rebase LSTs of any kind. And with regards to reward accruing LSTs as well, liquidity profile is extremely important to me. And I would never want to personally, myself, again, this doesn't reflect Kinetiq, this doesn't reflect anything, but I would never personally use my hype in anywhere that I feel like could have a liquidity drop off at any moment because of varying reasons. So today I can't recommend anything, man. Honestly, I know this sounds like super like, defensive of Kinetiq and whatnot, but I'm telling you, like, just as a general like Hyperliquid appreciator and like just general advocate for the ecosystem, I would be using one today if there was one that I would use, but today there just isn't. There's no farming or rewards that justify the potential risk to underlying hype for me, which is why we've actually done at Kinetiq way more audits than people probably would have suggested that we do. We've spared no cost or expense in making sure that the top auditors in the space ensure that the code base is robust and secure. This has led to many weeks and months of back and forth on what is exactly the exact same issues that have been found or like brought up by other auditors. So it ensures that every single issue hasn't been touched just one time, but touched across many different perspectives, many different auditors and skill sets. And that's kind of what drives my decision around what to use. Now, to the other part of your question, the latter part, to be specific in terms of collaborations, kHYPE with any other LST is certainly possible, right? Again, today, is there one that I would try to back and work with from a liquidity pairing perspective? Probably not, because what I care the most about is just ensuring that, kHYPE holders have the most robust liquidity and don't have like crazy depeg risk, especially nothing sponsored or like deliberately, I guess you could say, assisted by Kinetiq in terms of setting up LPs or encouraging some. But yeah, like I could see that being the case in the future for sure. Like I definitely don't write that off. So if there was one that came to mind that would be, good enough to kind of kick that off with, I think just LSTs that would be using kHYPE under the hood would be important. That's kind of a way I would see to kind of maximize whatever that specific protocol is trying to give to people that want to pair their LST with kHYPE. So in this case, like LoopedHYPE, they've mentioned to us that they're going to use kHYPE under the hood. I don't know what the split between kHYPE and STHYPE would be. Hyperbeat's another one. They've mentioned they're going to use kHYPE under the hood. I don't know what the split will be between kHYPE and, X other LST. But that would be where I start to feel better about it, after just making sure that securely, they're in line with what my standards personally would be. So that's all I suggest. I would only recommend what I could use, and today there isn't any. But that will change very quickly once kHYPE is out. So yeah, man, sorry if it's not a perfect question.
Common thing too.
Yeah.
No, I think your answer makes sense. Like anybody building something, like if you thought that there was something that you would use instead, like why are you building it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Rarded, why would Rarded be building this like DeFi AI coin if he thought that it already existed and solved that problem? Right. Why would we make Hypio if we thought there was this Hyperliquid Maxi PFP that was already filling that? You know what I mean? It's every builder is this kind of. It's like that to give your own standard. That's why you're building it. And otherwise, you're just extracting. Being.
I wouldn't top blast hyper NFTs if I thought there would be a better cat NFT. Oh man.
Exactly. Rard, did you have something?
Yeah, I'm pretty retarded.
Thanks, no worries.
Is kHYPE gonna be programmable out the box, or will we need to wrap it?
No, it's already wrapped. So you'll be able to do your thing pretty much out the gate. You can call it NKHYPE or whatever you want. Yeah.
Bullish. That's good to hear. Yeah, that's just a pretty better UX. That's about it on my end.
Oh yeah, bro. Wake up, Neko. Wake up.
Inshallah, brother. Very soon.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Dude, the Neko gives he's making where.
Dude, this guy, like the videos that they publish, man. I'm always DMing him like, "Yo, like this is crazy." Like, I love them. Yeah, the specific one of like my favorite ever Neko video, by the way, for any of you who care to go and find that, is the one with they announced Neko with like Jeff partnership, I think, where Neko's waking up out of bed and then he sees the Jeffs dancing outside. Like that's so hilarious.
It's very autistic.
Yeah, it's fucking awesome. I watched that way too many times.
The content's been great.
Yeah, I watched that way too many times to admit. But yeah, shout out Neko.
I think we're close to wrapping this up. Anybody else have any parting thoughts other than otherwise we'll start tying it up.
If anybody wants entertainment, Kinetiq Discord is always pretty lively. We have a feedback channel there in which I don't know how many languages have now been spoken in it, but it's now quite interesting. There's like a daily rotation of some kind of chant. It's very, very, very funny. So it's part of my morning ritual at this point. Just popping in there and doing, partaking in said pre-compiled chants.
Yeah. Well, TLDR, for anybody who is joining us late, Kinetiq is building one of the most interesting LSD products, probably in crypto period, not just Hyperliquid. And we're just waiting for the pre-compiles to go live so they can interact with the other half of the Hyperliquid blockchain, which is the perp which is like the most profitable business in crypto right now. And it's a big part of why it makes it interesting. Is what I was saying. Everything's interesting. Hyperland is more interesting. It's an Aave fork, but now you have Hyperliquid integration and the things that you can do with collateral on perps. And the same way, kHYPE gets a lot more interesting because you can integrate with all of the stuff on Hyperliquid. Pretty much all Hypio team building for it's got to be over 6 months now. I would imagine Omnia. Yeah. So we're all eagerly awaiting it. It's been a awesome space. Awesome to have you back, and I'm sure we'll have you back again after it goes live. And we're all super excited. Every day is exciting on Hyperliquid. So yeah, thank you all for coming. Omnia.
Oh, thanks,
for
man.
sharing your
We run
views
up
with us.
episode 3 post-launch, so let's make that happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
All right,
buddies.
Have a good
Take
day,
care,
guys.
buddy.
All right, buddy.
Peace, all right, buddy.
I'm getting lubed up and rubbing my buddy, so I'll see you guys later.